Dr. Allard, when you're directing, when you're planning a shoot, how do you decide what sorts of shots to use for what moment? When will you go for a close-up? When will you decide to go wider?
I believe that the use of close-up is incredibly important for storytelling, for reaction, for underlining particularly moments of drama, of reaction to drama, reactions to action. But I think basically your use of close-up, it's all very personal. This is the problem with this. There is no textbook that's ever been written as to how one can direct. You have to say to yourself, I need to respect, first of all, the music. I need to respect the librettist. I must respect the performers, the conductor, the production, and the audience. I think it's very important to remember what you're doing is not for you, but it's for a great mass of people whom you can never know, but you have to try to be able to be supportive of them and bring them the detail of narrative, of storytelling as clearly as you possibly can. And I think if I need to try to say, here I need a close-up, I think it is dictated basically by the libretto, by the action, or by a specific change in the composition, whether it be dynamic, whether it be orchestral, or whether it simply be part of the construction of the score itself. That's what is for me the road plan. And that is the road plan I would try to use. Now, there are times when I will break that rule for various dramatic or musical reasons. But those are the things the gut tells you, this is where I think I want to go. It's a musical feeling, in my case. It may not be a musical feeling with other directors. They can do it maybe in a different way. But for me, it has to come in a specific musical way.
You mentioned that there are sometimes some specific instances where you will make an exception or do it in a different way. What are some of those times that have happened?
I can remember when we were doing Valkyra at the Met, and there was a marvelous moment in the second act, Wotan Brunhilde, and it was a moment where Wotan is simply addressing Brunhilde, and simply, it is a highly emotional moment. But it's not necessarily the moment where you just want to see Wotan singing his wonderful line. I wanted this particular moment to be able to use a shot where Hildegard Behrens' face and eyes would tell the story, would give a subtext to the music. And I remember deliberately finding a specific place for a camera high in the tormenta where I knew I could get a particular moment that would look down into Brunhilde's eyes. And it was, for me, an absolutely imperative moment. But it was necessary for me to be able to create that because it was telling the story. It was underlining. It was simply saying to the public, please look at her because her face is giving you a subtext.
Well, let's talk a little bit about sound. What do you feel about the sound in the HD transmissions?
Well, that was it was actually an interesting experience to do this Anna Bolena comparison so quickly, because they talk about how the sound is like it's the best state-of-the-art, most fabulous sound in these theaters, and I actually found it homogenized, flat. The high frequencies were like the tenor was just, it was excruciating. It was painful. So you don't get that feeling of envelopment that you get in the great opera houses. You don't have the feeling of directionality that you get in the opera house. It's really very artificial and very strange. You get used to it after a while, I guess, but it isn't the same. And it's not like going to going to Broadway, to amplified Broadway, which for my money is that, that's the worst. That's much worse than the HD sound. That just drives me completely up the wall because you really can't hear any differentiation in that. But I think there are a lot of limitations in terms of the sound in the movie theaters.
I think I would excuse me.
Yeah,
I think I would agree with you. I remember seeing Siegfried in Brighton in England last November, I think it was, and my reaction to it sitting there was that the emphasis, as I was hearing it in Brighton, was very much in favour of the voice at the expense of the orchestra. This was my feeling, and I was not responsible for this production. I had nothing to do with it. I was just a mere Joe Soap person, member of the public. And I sat there thinking, but what about this great orchestra and this wonderful orchestration? Something is missing. Now, it could well have been the reproduction system that we were hearing in England at that stage, or it might just have been the basic balance or the lack of balance. I don't know, but I agree with you. Sometimes there have been moments when I feel it's not quite right.
Yeah, it does vary cinema to cinema as far as, I know there are some cinemas that have upgraded their sound systems to accommodate the HD, but I think it also drives home the point that this is its own art form apart from being live in a house. It's not the same. It's like the recording industry, that's its own art form.
Surely.
This idea of it's not like live theater, and we listen to these recordings of singers in the past and these studio recordings, and you forget that they were human and they did have off nights and live performances, but we only remember, oh wow, isn't that wonderful? And if you didn't hear them in the house from night to night, you think, oh, these people were always perfect. What's wrong with these singers today? They're not, blah, blah, blah. But trust me, the greats had their off nights. It's just that the recording industry, it's its own art form. Okay, let's do that again. Let's get that down again. Then it becomes like, like basketball, let's shoot that again. I did miss it, So live, I think that's what's so special about live performance is that it's going to be different every night and anything can happen. It's not like making a movie where it's going to be the same. And I think that's why live theater is not going anywhere. The demise of live theater or live opera has been, foretold for the last, since the gramophone came along.
At the Met, as far as I remember, the basic microphoning for soloists is arranged with a series of little microphones all across the front of the stage, which will take care of the voices and maybe the chorus. There will be a series of, I don't know how many microphones in the orchestra to pick up that. There will be microphones on stage to take care of chorus, and of course microphones in the house to be able to pick up ambience and general roundness of sound. And all of that, however many microphones it might be, will be mixed. At the Met, Jay Sachs has been doing it for years, and he's a master at this, and he will actually put it together in a way that it all works. We sometimes use the same technique in Europe, but sometimes we decide to give the performers radio mics. Most singers dislike wearing them, and I think I would understand why, because it's something they're not used to. But in a particular complex piece, or in a particular piece, a recitative opera of Mozart or Strauss or Rossini, it is sometimes very necessary to be able to make certain that all the voice parts, the words, the recitativi, are clear, because this is how that opera or series of operas will progress. And therefore, in addition to microphones at the front of the stage and in the orchestra and in the house, there will be radio mics. And it is again the same art, but it's a question of balancing those mics. And it sometimes can help a singer who may not be in the best of voices and may be forced sometimes to save the voice in a big house, and there is no other day then such a performance can be performed. Then at that moment it does give singers the assurance that at least the words will be clear. And this can be a great boost to someone who is not 100% in top form. And we have to consider that.
Also, with the radio mics, there are considerations of the set. If the set is such
This
that
is true.
one singer is in one position and one singer is like maybe high up, not only far up stage of the microphones, but in elevation away from the floor mics at the front of the
Absolutely.
stage, and that helps the mix to
It
have
really
a
does.
radio mic.
And sometimes the radio mics need to be hidden in the wig or in the costume, and all of this can be solved. The only problem is if you're doing, for example, Death in Venice, and you have singers that need to be in a state of undress. Where do you put the radio mic? Okay. And I have known some singers, no names, I promise you, but I have known some singers that have believed when they have come to a playback that a certain singer or a certain co-artist is wearing a radio mic where they are not, simply because they fear that the voice has been enlarged unnaturally. It happens.
Yeah, there's a standard joke. It's like, oh, you want to be heard? Go sing in so-and-so's wig.
That's it. That's it. You know it as well.
Right, exactly. It's a joke.
This is where sometimes as a television director you have to change career and become a diplomat or a psychiatrist.
In the intermission, you've just been out there haunting Hagen, and suddenly, they're interviewing you, and you're so charming and you're so energetic. What is this like?
It's absolutely fine. I know some people who don't, they're like, oh, no. But when it's done, it's done. I mean, it's acting. I don't take it home with me. The curtain comes down and we're like, it's, and also leading up to it, while we're back in the dressing rooms, we're not sitting back there, okay, ooh, Wagner, we're back there clowning around, and then when I'm called to the stage, there's a bit of a walk to the stage. It might take maybe 35, 40 seconds to get down there, and then as you're walking, you start to sort of get in character. There are a few mirrors. You can look at yourself in the mirror and see the costume, and like, yes, I am this character, and then but with the intermission features, I'm fine. They come back to the dressing room area. It's just like, and I've also had some hosting duties. I hosted the Satyagraha HD, and that was a kick. That was fun. It was because the stuff that you guys don't see. I mean, there's the on-camera shot. And then, but off camera, there's just this flurry of activity and people, production people and the people carrying the cameras and the people holding the wires and the director saying, okay, wrap it up. The questions going on. And the first time I did it and I didn't want to be rude, and they were like, cut him off. And he's finishing his answer. And I'm just like, okay, Eric, you're going to make them go into overtime. It's like, well, that's where we're going to have to leave it today. Thank you so much.
I would recommend them to go to hear the real thing in the opera house, in the true surrounding. And I'm not arguing against myself or my profession or my career. All I can say is that when I was introduced, the first opera I ever saw at the age of 12 was in fact Valkyra. And the impact and the impression on me at the age of 12 was such that I knew I had to somehow spend the rest of my life in opera and dealing with a little bit of Wagner on the side.